We're going to bring up 5 presenters one at a time, and they're going to challenge you and nudge you in a direction to really think in a fresh and new way. And to do that, I want to bring up Mr. Randy Rouse. Randy Rouse has been our president for several years. Give him a round of applause. So here we go, Randy. Let's take it away.
Thanks, Matt. The song that was playing is a song called Barbra Streisand. It's by a group called Duck Sauce, and it's rising in the charts. It's a dance song. And I was driving my 10th grader home from spring football practice about a month ago, and that song came on, and I think there's a photo coming up of him soon. The song came on, and the only line in the song is it just keeps going, the music, and then it says, Barbra Streisand. And then it keeps going. I don't know if you've heard this song. And so he said, yeah, this song is getting really popular. And I'm like, okay, Jonah, do you know who Barbra Streisand is? And he goes, I have no idea. So a couple nights later, I was talking at a senior banquet at a parish in our area, and I went up to a bunch of teens all the way from 9th grade through 12th grade, and I asked 7 more teenagers if they knew who Barbra Streisand was. All 7 did not know who Barbra Streisand was. Even didn't know that she was in the Meet the Parents movies and all that type of thing. Had no idea who she was. And so the question I want to ask you guys, is your ministry relevant? Are you still living in an era trying to reach out to teenagers with the cultural references from the past, what you know as something that might be part of a culture? Are we designing skits? Are we putting in all of those things into our ministry that teenagers, it's just going over their head. They don't even understand what we're talking about because we're not staying current with them. And for that reason, a lot of people say, well, why does Life Teen put out its resources on a semester basis, every 4 months, rather than, just put out a book and hope that it lasts for 5 years? Well, the main reason is because we want to always stay culturally relevant to the teenagers. So the skits and the references that we use in those talks and everything that we're putting into the catechetical resources and the life support homily resources for the priests, that those have a context with the current culture of teenagers. And so it's really important that as you look at your ministry, that you look through the eyes of a teenager. And do teenagers at your parish view you as relevant? Is the ministry right now relevant to how their lives? And how we react and interact with them, whether we like this or not, will give them an example of how relevant the church is to them. Does the church know the world that they're living in? Does it look at videos like we just saw and say, that's the world of our teens? And the absolute best way that you can stay relevant to the teenagers in your parish is for you to spend time with them in relationship. Not just listen to the radio stations or look at the websites that they look at or all the Facebook feeds, but it's to talk to them directly, to have that one-on-one conversation or those conversations with groups of teenagers to find out a lot about what's going on in their lives. That video that you just saw should be replayed time and time again in the interactions that you have with teenagers, making sure every step of the way that you're staying relevant for them. So our question this afternoon is your ministry relevant to teens?
Thank you, Randy. It's tricky because it seems like you have to stay informed on the pop cultural level, right? You need to, we talked about with our crosswords and stuff like that, but you also have to stay informed on a personal level as well to talk to teenagers. And you'll find that both of those can help keep you better clued in. One of the people I always turn to stay clued in is Mr. Ryan Miller. I want to invite him up on stage. Ryan Miller has served on our summer staff at our summer camps. He's been a missionary with us. He was recently asked to step up into a new role as Director of Internet Ministry for Life Teen. And what Ryan's going to talk about for the next few minutes is how his communication changed. Give it up for Ryan Miller.
Thanks, Matt. I want to throw out an idea to you that we are in a rapid change in communication. The reason I put an iPhone up there is that like the title says, this changes everything again. Google came out with the stat last year, and it's profound. And when they kind of say things, you kind of have to believe them because they know a lot of things. They said from the dawn of civilization to 2003, we had created about 2 exabytes of information, which is about 500 billion gigabytes. We now create that every 2 days. It's enormous. There was also a study last year that came out. It talked about teenage use of media. And it was a study that happened 5 years ago, and they said that teenagers were using media, consuming media, on an average of 7 hours a day, 5 years ago. Last year, it came out that it was 11 hours a day. It is their number one activity. They do it more than sleep, eat, study. The iPhone 4 and devices like this represent what I would like to call ubiquitous computing, meaning you have a device in your pocket that will give you access to information and communication 24/7 wherever you are. That is a powerful amount of ideas that are consistently in your pocket, and your teenagers are accessing that and finding out things all the time. So the question is, what does the church say about this? Because they have an opinion about this. JP2's last letter before he died, 2005, was a document called The Rapid Development. And what he was talking about is that our society is going through a vast cultural transformation. But when you talk about JP2, he is always talking about mission and evangelization. Always about those two things. And so what he says in it, and it's really interesting for us as catechists, is that when we are evangelizing our teens, we have to use media. That media is required for evangelization in the third millennium. This is not a choice. This is a requirement. So how do we do that? Benedict, this past year, this year in fact, wrote a document. Every year the church says something about communication. And there's kind of a cool quote that he says. I think it's really important to kind of just ponder on this. We are living through a period of vast cultural transformation. Spreading information and knowledge is giving birth to a new way of thinking with unprecedented opportunities for establishing relationships and building fellowship. It sounds a lot like Facebook to me. What he's saying is that there is power in the fact that our teens are engaging technology and talking to each other through technology. It's not just a matter of saying, well, you're on Facebook for X amount of hours a day. It's the way that they talk to each other. And so we can't disregard that. We have to engage it, and we have to do it smartly. So the last thing is, it always has to lead to transformation. And the example is Emmaus. The example is first asking them a question, seeing where they're at, talking with them, revealing truth, and finally leading them back to the Eucharist. And isn't that exactly the model that we at Life Teen have? That is exactly what you do in your youth ministries.
Thank you, Ryan. I told you this would be quick. I want to invite Ms. Marlowe. You want to join me on stage? Marlowe has been a beautiful addition to our Life Teen family. I believe she came through Life Teen as a teenager. I know we were both parishioners at St. Timothy. She's taken the word to the far reaches of the earth. And she's going to be asking the question, how do you treat teens as a group, and how do you treat teens on the individual level? So Marlowe Dowdy.
I think the neat thing I had the opportunity to do the past 5.5 years was to spend time with our military families and teens in Heidelberg, Germany. And what amazing teens they are. It was like hanging out with college students, but yet they go home. So it was awesome. But one of the teens, he would come so faithfully every Sunday to Life Night. And then all of a sudden, when school started, he started like disappearing. He'd come, once a week, and wouldn't come by the office, but then he'd come, he just started disappearing. And then he stopped playing football, which was like his passion. And we're like, man, what's going on? Like, are we not reaching him? Like, do we need to change our ministry style? Like, what is going on? Well, what was going on is both his parents had to be deployed at the same time, which is very rare, but it does happen. And he had 4 younger brothers and sisters who he, as a junior in high school, had to take care of. But it was so easily for my team and I to be like, man, like, our life night must be lacking. Like, we can't reach this guy. And he was so faithful, and now he's not coming. But it wasn't until we saw him and was like, we just need to go out and be like, what is going on? And it wasn't until we saw him as an individual do we realize that it wasn't anything that we were doing. It was that he needed the love and support from that relational ministry. And he needed help to get through those hard times when he was the one making sandwiches for school lunches, or he was the one trying to get, his brother or sister off to elementary school before he went to his junior classes. It's just, so it's amazing, like, how easy it is to be like, oh no, you're just, you must be bored with us, or you're just you're just a teenager and you're forgetting all this stuff. So, but all of our teens, especially our military teens, who are in many of your parishes, and you may not even know that their dad's like in the reserve or a National Guard or a mom, and what they need is they need community. They need to belong, no matter how much they rebel or it looks like they're out of it. One of the things that I loved in Heidelberg, Germany, is the kids with the mohawks and the black clothes. They seemed to get it so much. They had such a love for the Eucharist. But yet, if I would have been like, oh, sorry, I'm not talking to you because you have a mohawk and black clothes on and you're just like scary, I would have missed that. I would have missed the beauty that they had in reverence before our Eucharist. And so I challenge you guys, like, who is in your life nights and edge nights, and who is in your parish but not necessarily coming, and why is that? Do you see them as individuals, or do you see them as a group? And I want to close. There's this definition on urbandictionary.com that this teen wrote about stereotypes. And I love the way he typed it, because it was totally like half words, half like letters, and you're like, what did that really say? I had to read it like 3 times. But it says, stereotypes seem to be an alternative to people who don't want to get to know other people. So they classify them without getting the facts. Let me repeat that. Stereotypes seem to be an alternative to people who don't want to get to know other people. So they classify them without getting the facts. Do you know the facts about the kids in your parish and community?
We're seeing a theme here. There's being informed on the pop cultural level, but at the same time being informed on a very personal level and getting to know and going on that Emmaus journey with teenagers. There's also the danger, and it's a very tricky danger, of thinking of teens collectively as the same even in your own youth group. That just because they're all sitting on the same floor, it can be easy because, you got to process these things and you got to prepare talks and you ask questions like, where are teens today? And inevitably, when you try to navigate this tricky area, you can really become distant from the very individual souls that are sitting in your parishes. And Marlo brings up a great example of that. I want to invite up Katie on stage. Katie Heller, some of you may remember her, Katie Orlando. She's charming nonetheless. She's just lucky that Mr. Heller said, will you marry me? So, and he's a lucky guy too. Katie is our director. She helps out with resources for Life Teen. So a lot of the Edge Nights and Life Nights that are in front of you, Katie helped compose those. And she's going to talk about what type of glory are we seeking and where are we bringing people to. Katie.
So the question we want to pose is it about his kingdom or is it about your kingdom? And there's 3 things that I want to bring up. And the first one is that are you providing opportunities, different opportunities for prayer, for devotion, and spirituality? Or are you really providing the opportunities that have worked for you? And I ask this question because I think a lot of times that we as humans, we get comfortable with what we know, and so when we can talk confidently about something, that's something that we like to speak a lot about. But we do a disservice to our teens if we don't provide those extra opportunities of prayer, of devotion, of spirituality within our life nights and our retreats, in small group activities during the week, that we really have to step out of our comfort zones and be willing to be uncomfortable so that we can lay a great foundation for our teens to experience different aspects of our church that's so vast. The second one is that, are we constantly discerning our role in our ministry? Are we asking the question, Lord, are you still calling me to this? Or are we scared to ask the question because we don't know what would happen if we leave and we want to protect our own legacy? And I think that a lot of times in ministry is that we're scared because we've spent so many hours and we're so dedicated that we don't want to walk away because we find a lot of worth in what we do. And we should, because we're serving the Lord. But if we love the Lord and we trust in him and we can hand over the ministry to him, then we have nothing to worry about. So we have to always be discerning, what is my place in this ministry? Or am I just protecting it because I don't know what I would do next, or I don't want to walk away from it? And the last one is, and it's a little bit more abstract, is what happens to your teens when they go to college? A lot of times, and I had friends that were the same way, as they come out of a really dynamic youth ministry program like Life Teen, where they have these great experiences and Mass is awesome and it's engaging and they have great music, and then they step onto their campuses and their Newman centers and it's nothing. And there's nothing. And so they begin to get scared and their foundation is rocked because they don't have that community that they're used to. But if we spend time providing those opportunities of prayer, if we spend time showing them how to be involved outside of our youth group, they're able to be in the community, to build the larger church, to serve in different parishes, to serve in different aspects, to meet the Lord in silence of Mass if they're going and they don't have music at their church, to really hold on to the sacraments, which is the meat and what's going to sustain them through that ministry. So the question that I leave is, are you building his kingdom or are you building yours?
And I think the photo you see up on the screen right now speaks so powerfully to that. You know, this was, that speaks very powerfully too. The glory of God, behold. What you saw was this, is Father John Girth, who's on our board of directors, was leading Eucharistic Adoration at Steubenville West, which is a conference we host down in Tucson. And what I love about those style of conferences and all the youth conferences that Life Teen also holds is, although you can have personalities hold people's interest, and you can have personalities keep teenagers engaged and develop a little bit of the arc of the weekend, ultimately, the end goal is never to lead a teen to ourselves, but to lead teen to Christ. And it seems like such a simple thing when you say it that way, but as you know, in the complexity of being a youth minister, it's a lot more tricky than that. And it gets very difficult, and that's why we always hang that banner that says leading teens closer to Christ. Our last person I want to invite up on stage, Mr. Mark Hart, really is about leading teens closer to Christ. And what's personally been on his heart, of course, is the Bible, and just his conviction to get Catholic teens more in synchronized with our Catholic faith and understanding Scripture. And Mark's going to talk about choosing medium and how we reach teens through that. So Mark, give it up.
Thanks, Matt. You know, this morning, I really enjoyed watching Kevin and Lisa kind of take a trip back in time of what ministry used to be. You know, we didn't, before we had projectors and cool editing equipment, and we had those overheads with the light bulbs that burned as hot as the sun, you know. Remember those? And you didn't have like cool editing software. You had two VCRs hooked up to each other, and you're pressing stop, record, press pause, pause, record, stop, and they had the top loading VCRs, and it was awesome. Everything was right in the universe. And I remember when I first started in youth ministry, you know, that was like in the Zach Morris Saved by the Bell. See, I'm dropping references you understand, but the teens wouldn't. Okay, like Barbra Streisand. They had those big brick cell phones, you know what I mean, with like the antenna that you could get Radio Free Europe out of the top of. And I remember that I was given a pager. I had a pager. You know, my pastor gave me a pager. It was like a leash, you know, like he always knew where to get a hold of me. But I remember teens had pagers before they had cell phones, and I vividly recall it'd be like a Friday night, and I would like sneak away to someone's phone, and I would start calling the pager numbers of my teens, and I would just put in the code 777. So I told them that was God's address. like 3 sevens, you know. So I always had this vision like on a Friday night, you know, it's like 9 o'clock, they're at some party, it's crap, you know, like I'm walking out, you know. Because I just texted him like, hey, I'm thinking about you, I'm praying for you, you know. And times have changed. And I rejoice in a lot of the ways that technology, I mean, obviously technology can certainly be used for bad. We know that. But then why would our Holy Father, as brilliant as he is, actually stop and pause and look at his church, especially his priests, and encourage them to blog, as if the priests don't have enough to do? But he did. He stopped and said, he's encouraged the priests to blog more. He's encouraged us to have a presence online. And Ryan quoted part of it. If you haven't read the message yet for World Communications Day, it's absolutely sublime. It's brilliant. Because what he's saying is the same thing that St. Paul would have been saying, the same thing that Christ himself said. Get on the rooftops and shout it. If you don't think that St. Paul would have been using social networking, you are not reading the same epistle that I am. And it wasn't as though he thought that his letter to the Corinthians could just be it. I'm going to write it on a scroll, some parchment, and hand it off. It was only after he had been in relationship with them, lived in the city for 18 months, looked them in the eyes, proclaimed the goodness, the greatness, the passion, the mercy, the love of Jesus Christ, that later on he would write a letter back to them. And it was when he wrote the letter back later that those words meant something more. And what I'm seeing now, and this is something I'm really passionate about, what medium are you using to connect with teens? Because the deadly part of social networking is some people think, hey, we're going to set up a Facebook page for our parish, or we're going to set up a Twitter feed for our parish or whatever, and that's how I'm going to announce to the teens that this is going on. And it's really safe. And obviously we need to be safe. Absolutely, unequivocally. But that can't take the place of being in a relationship. That it's not an either or. It's not a, hey, I posted the event, we're having a life on the Facebook page, and that's all I can do. That's evangelization. No, it's not. It's an excuse. I've said this 1,000 times. My wife taught me this when we got married, and it's never left me. Get comfortable with being uncomfortable. Yeah, oh yeah. That's bumper sticker theology right there. But I'll tell you something, it absolutely rings true. That a lot of us, let's be honest, we talked about relational ministry this morning in different times. A lot of us, we get really, really uncomfortable with relational ministry. All of a sudden we become very aware of our own issues, of whether or not we fit in culture or not. And we can use, to a fault, things like Facebook, Twitter, other things like that, to say that we're doing evangelization. Look, I invited people. Posting an event is not inviting them. Picking up the phone is inviting them. Walking up to them after a mass, as uncomfortable as you may be, with their parents, and looking them in the eyes and saying, I really hope you'll come with us. That's an invitation. And now different social networking functions as a reminder. And even in the way, I know many of you have your own Facebook page, your own Twitter pages, that kind of thing. This is another opportunity that you have not just to get out information about events, but to walk them into the Catholic way of life. That even if I post something as simple on a Twitter as, I'm going on a date night with my wife, celebrate the sacrament. I'm not writing it like, hey, everybody in the universe needs to know I'm going on a date. I'm writing it to remind those young people that are reading it that some married people do still love each other. Some married people still want to go out together. Some married people still want to woo each other and dote on each other and celebrate the sacrament because that's what the sacrament deserves. So rather than just passing on a moment, you're walking them into a movement. And that's why each and every moment that we're going to reach out to our young people, we have to look at the mediums at our disposal. Look at Facebook, Twitter, all those other social networking things, Tumblr. Look at those as tools, even more tools that are at your disposal, that if you think about with an intentionality and pray about, the Holy Spirit can now utilize to further walk with your young people the other 165 and 66 hours a week. So that when they're far away from the church is not far away from them. Amen.